Hello and welcome to Analog Insights. In today's episode, my friend Greg and I review the Kowa Six, a lesser known 6x6 medium format single lens reflex camera with interchangeable lenses, produced by the Japanese manufacturer Kowa between 1968 and 1974. The Kowa Six is also known as the poor man's Hasselblad because at the time it was released and hit the market for the first time, it cost around half the price of the much more famous Swedish Hasselblad 500C. And this is also where it tried to compete, so it was also directed at professional photographers, and Kowa made quite an effort of portraying the camera as offering all the benefits of a medium format camera combined with the handling of a 35mm camera. So they quickly introduced to the market all sorts of additional accessories like a pistol grip and things like that that would make it as easy and quick as possible to use, and also cater to the needs of sports photographers or fashion photographers, so everyone who needed some faster action and be supported in working there. And yet, of course, the competition was fierce, so there were a lot of, especially professional photographers, who had already invested in camera setups from Hasselblad or Rolleiflex and had a lot of accessories and lenses, so it was really difficult for the Kowa Six to get its footing, despite the fact that they really tried to introduce a lot of lenses and new features on a regular basis. And at the end, the camera did not become the commercial success that it set out to be. And yet it's interesting to look at it from today's perspective and what the today's assessment would be in comparison to other cameras on the market and the different price points. So Greg and I took the camera out on photo walks in and around Würzburg, shooting some Kodak Portra 400, some Rollei APX 100, and interestingly some Kodak Vision 3 developed some proper cinefilm developed in the ECN2 process. So let's dive in there and take a closer look at this very special Kowa Six camera. So what about the history, features and build quality of the Kowa Six? When it was originally introduced in 1968, the camera came with three different lenses: a 55mm f3.5, the standard 85mm f2.8, and the 150mm f3.5 lens. The camera was slightly updated in 1970 and then saw a new version, the Kowa 6mm, that featured a multi-exposure mode and mirror lockup feature in 1972. And then shortly afterwards, in 1973, there was the update to the Kowa 6.2, and then in 1974 to the Kowa Super 66, which we also have featured here in the review. And the last two versions still came with the multiple exposure mode, but also introduced interchangeable magazines, which was really interesting and which we'll touch on in a minute, and did without the mirror lockup feature again. So kind of removed that feature, and only the MM has it in between. So if that is important to you, it's good to know. But if interchangeable magazines are important, then the last two versions are particularly interesting. In general, the Kowa Six is a very well built, solid, kind of heavy constructed camera, a very nice and straightforward design. So if we look at the different sides of the camera, on the front you have a shutter release button plus what Kowa calls the positive Kowa bayonet, which is basically an outer ring that can be put around the lens and then locked into place in a very similar fashion to the Mamiya RZ67 bayonet, for instance, and many other cameras. It was quite common at the time. At the bottom of the camera is just a tripod socket, and the back is typically very clean. The earlier versions were completely clean, and only the last versions feature a little pouch, so to speak, is a film where you can put in a film reminder so that you know what you have loaded. On the left side of the camera is a switch to choose between 120 and 220 film rolls, and a knob that you can kind of pull out in order to release the spool when changing film. And speaking of film and changing film, what is also remarkable in general about the camera is how the film is put into the camera, kind of in this L shape, which also resulted in kind of L-shaped magazines for these later versions that had interchangeable magazines. On the right side of the camera is a film, a frame counter, and the advance crank or film advance crank that also cocked the shutter again. And on the top is waist level viewfinder by default, but these viewfinders and the focusing screens are interchangeable. There are a total of 4 different focusing screens and I think 7 viewfinders. Very interesting ones. So there's a permanent waist level viewfinder with a loop, for instance, or there is a 90-degree and 45-degree viewfinder, and also a special one that features a built-in light meter. It's a 90-degree viewfinder with a built-in light meter that runs traditionally on a PX625 battery that of course is not available anymore, but you can still use it with a LR44 battery plus an adapter today, and then it works perfectly fine. All you have to do is choose the correct lens setting of the lens that you have attached, and then you get the correct light measurement, which is of course very interesting and also helps the camera compete with the Hasselblad system that of course features finders with built-in through the lens metering as well. In addition to these features, the Kowa Super 66 also comes with the multi-exposure mode and the interchangeable magazines, and this was really a game changer and something that was heavily requested from Kowa at the time, and was also arguably the main disadvantage in comparison to the Hasselblad cameras, that of course you had interchangeable magazines and you could simply switch in between from color film to black and white film, or switch between slide film and color negative film and so on. And that was simply not possible with the Kowa 6. So once you put in a film, you were bound to use it and run through the entire roll of film, and only then be able to change it. And that of course was a major critique at the time, and Kowa then introduced these later versions with the interchangeable magazines that suddenly made that possible as well. And they were smart in the sense that they also introduced a 6x4.5 magazine and a Polaroid film bag as well. So the system became quite versatile as a result of that. From today's perspective, it is interesting to note that the Kowa 6 body, the original one, is less expensive than a typical Hasselblad film bag, so a typical Hasselblad magazine. So you could also just opt, if you don't mind the additional weight, to get 2 bodies, 2 Kowa 6 original bodies, and have one loaded with black and white film and the other one with color film, and switch between them using the same set of lenses. But of course you can also go for the more expensive version and the Kowa Super 66 with a couple of magazines, and then you're good to go as well. But of course this would be the more expensive choice, and there are cheaper alternatives by now. So what about the lenses and accessories? All lenses come with built-in leaf shutters with speeds ranging from 1 second all the way up to 1/500th of a second, plus a T mode. Interestingly, no lens features a bulb mode, but instead they do have a self-timer, which is also interesting, in addition to the typical X and M flash synchronizations. As always for leaf shutters, the flash syncs across all the different shutter speeds, which of course is very convenient. And these lenses here come with Seiko SLV in between the lens shutters, and also with a depth of field preview lever, as well as markings for meter and feet on the lenses itself. The initially introduced lenses were quickly complemented by additional ones, and you really have a fantastic set of lenses that you can tap into, ranging from 19mm fisheye and 35mm super wide angle all the way up to a 250mm and even 500mm telephoto lens. So really nice. And what I found particularly interesting is that all these different lenses make do with two different filter sizes. So a 67mm filter size for the majority of them, and then naturally for those who just need who need to be larger, a 95mm filter thread. So basically very convenient in terms of the filter handling. If you invest in the filters, you can basically use them on most of the lenses. And in addition to that, as mentioned before, there are extension tubes and various hand grips, finders and focusing screens that we already touched on, and even microscope adapters for scientific applications. And personally, I find it quite remarkable how quickly Kowa created this entire camera system within just a couple of years, probably driven by the fierce competition and by trying very hard to get a foot into that professional market. And from today's perspective, what is interesting is that you can basically tap into this set of accessories and lenses and configure a medium format 6x6 camera that really fits your needs. So if you want to have, let's say, a pistol grip and a really nice portrait lens, you can go for that, and then you have a very quick and easy to use camera that of course is still heavy, but it produces 6x6 negatives and is really convenient in use, and produces these fantastic results. So if that is your thing and you're kind of into exploring different systems and maybe configuring something that really fits your specific needs, then I can highly recommend taking a look at the Kowa 6 camera system. So what about the handling and our personal impressions? The camera feels well built and sounds wonderful. After taking a shot, the mirror stays up and the viewfinder as a result of that remains blank. So very similar to a Hasselblad, and then it takes turning the knob on the side to transport the film, flip the mirror back down, and of course cock the shutter. And this experience is really, again, a mechanical marvel that is surprisingly close to the Hasselblad experience. And of course, if you know all the stuff that is going on while you turn that crank, it is really remarkable, the sounds it produces and how wonderful it feels. What is also important from today's perspective, since these are quite old cameras, is of course that they can be serviced. So the cameras and the lenses can be serviced quite well. And Greg recommends the Phototechnik Dimas in Freiburg for their service, because it's one of their declared favorite cameras, and they service them really well and nicely. And when purchasing a camera, really take a closer look at it, check for the mechanics, whether everything is working or not. And if not, take it into consideration that you might potentially have to service them and kind of add these costs, but then you can feel confident that it will run for years to come afterwards, since it's so well built and solid in terms of its construction. The image quality produced by these lenses is fantastic. There are some lenses that stand out, especially the 35mm, that is virtually distortion free. It's so well corrected that you get really beautiful correctioned images out of it. The 85mm is a very interesting all-rounder and overall performer. And if you look at portraits, the 110mm and the 150mm lenses are fantastic. And as a full set, this camera system really lets you shoot basically everything that you can think of. And as touched on before, you can really choose which kind of way you want to use this camera. You can do it as we did on our Friday evening photo walk, kind of as relaxed as possible. Casually metering the light with a handheld meter, doing your settings and slowly taking a shot. But of course, you can also get the pistol hand grip, get the metered finder, and work much quicker with the very same camera. And adapt the pace in which you use it to the case that you want to use it for. And that I find interesting, and especially that versatility in combination with the relatively low prices that the camera system still has today. It is quite interesting, I think, especially for people wanting to transition into medium format, or people just starting out and looking for their very first medium format camera. I think this is a very interesting route to go, especially since in recent years the camera systems have become so expensive, and it sometimes has become prohibitive to own them. It really makes sense to look for alternatives, and we believe the Kowa 6 is definitely an interesting one. That also scales, as we described, in between the different versions. You can go for an early Kowa 6 and have a more basic setup, or go for the Super 66 and have something with interchangeable lenses, interchangeable magazines, and much more features. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Analog Insights and our review of the Kowa 6, a true gem in the medium format realm because of its versatility and the relatively low price points, and the still accessibility and serviceability as well. So if you are just starting out and are curious about medium format, or if you have already some experience with 35mm cameras but want to make that jump into medium format without breaking the bank, then we believe the Kowa 6 is worth taking a look. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to like it and maybe even share it with your friends. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to our channel. Jules, Greg and I really appreciate each and every subscriber coming our way. So thanks for watching. We hope to see you soon. Bye.